Welcome to our introductory course on Eternalism, the divine philosophy of the eternal worlds. Unit 20, The Primacy of Existence, Part 2. In Unit 20, we continue exploring the central gospel primacy issue, existence versus consciousness. The theme, existence versus resistance, highlights both the futility of resisting reality and the dangers of state power when used to violate, rather than protect, our inherent natural rights. We will also examine three forms of the primacy of consciousness that, when merged with state power, become tyrannical tools of a globalist agenda, driven by the delusional belief that controlling consciousness means controlling reality itself. By now, it should be clear that the primacy of consciousness mentality is a losing proposition. Resisting the absolute laws of reality is as futile as banging one's head against a brick wall. Reality doesn't yield to beliefs, desires, or wishes, no matter how sincere or desperate. Reality rules. It always has the final say in everything we believe or pursue in this life or the next. This truth is foundational to eternalism, where existence holds Tier 1 status over consciousness, as the most fundamental of all gospel primacy issues explored in this course. And it is in the finality of this Tier 1 foundational status of existence that I confidently declared, checkmate, game over. The primacy of consciousness mentality has only one response when confronted with the absolute, unyielding nature of reality, an appeal to force. Lacking any other means to impose its will, it turns to coercion, compulsion, and destruction. To understand this is to recognize that the war in heaven was not just a rebellion against God and his eternal plan, it was an all-out war against reality itself, because reality refused to conform to their will, making it, in their eyes, an oppressive and tyrannical force. To them, true freedom meant liberation from reality itself, an imaginary utopia where they could be and do anything without limits, constraints, or consequences. And if achieving that liberation required overpowering existence itself, so be it. After all, in their self-deluded minds, if reality would not submit to their will and whims, then reality deserved to perish. A third of the hosts of heaven fell for Lucifer's deceptive narrative, that they were victims of an oppressive, tyrannical reality designed to serve a spiritual elite who hoarded glory at the expense of those deemed inferior and incapable of progression on their own. This oppressor versus oppressed theme should sound familiar. Just as modern cries for social justice demand not just equality of opportunity, but equality of outcome, Lucifer declared, "I will redeem all mankind, that one soul shall not be lost. Wherefore give me thine honor." Lucifer's fiendish appeal for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the deceitful name of social justice was rejected by God, who chose his firstborn to redeem mankind. An enraged Lucifer kept not his first estate, and at that day many followed after him. Thus Lucifer became known as the accuser of the brethren, claiming that God's plan was rigged to exalt a spiritual elite while damning the rest to lesser states of glory, meaning the so-called noble and great ones would not only get all the glory, but all the women as well. As these accusations grew more hysterical and unhinged, it is no surprise that a war in heaven broke out. Yet beneath all these accusations lay an open rebellion against God and a war upon reality itself, a battle between the primacy of existence and the primacy of consciousness. Faced with the threat of force, we eternalists, who uphold the primacy of existence, can confidently respond, "You can't bully reality. Existence exists, whether you like it or not." But the primacy of consciousness mentality has an equally defiant reply. "Yes, but resistance exists, whether you like it or not as well." This calculated response reveals something troubling, something we eternalists must recognize and guard against. After all, these reality-defiant bullies uncovered this dark and terrible truth long ago, best expressed in these tyrannical words: "We don't have to control reality, we just have to control you." Just think of Cain's dark, terrible, and tyrannical response to Abel's righteousness. And you'll get an idea of what these primacy of consciousness bullies have in store for us if we do not conform to their wishes. A direct carryover from the war in heaven. As eternalists, we must always keep in mind 4 undeniable facts. First, existence exists, whether you like it or not. This simple truth embodies the primacy of existence, wherein reality is absolute and does not bend to wishes, beliefs, or demands. Second, resistance exists, whether you like it or not. This reflects the primacy of consciousness mentality, which, unwilling to accept reality, resorts to force and coercion to impose its will on others. Third, truth, not force, will set you free. Truth is unbreakable and cannot be broken down into little lies, no matter how much deception or pressure is applied. And fourth, reality cannot be bullied, but they don't have to control reality to enforce their will. They just have to control you, which is why it's crucial to understand the methods they use to achieve this. This brings us to our next slide, where we lay out the 3 major versions of the primacy of consciousness. The first and most familiar version of the primacy of consciousness is the religious version, which grants foundational, Tier 1, primacy to God over reality, but always my God, not someone else's. The second is the secular or social version, which imposes ideology above reality, but always my ideology, never another's. The third is the personal version, where whims override reality, but always my whims, not anyone else's. Each of these versions answers the same underlying question: whose consciousness rules over reality? In the religious version, God's will, or a supernatural or cosmic will, overrides reality. In the social version, a collective will defines truth and reshapes reality as desired. In the personal version, an individual will, my whims, dictates reality. Thus, while the source differs, a cosmic, collective, or individual will, all 3 versions assert the primacy of consciousness over existence. Resistance exists in all 3 versions of the primacy of consciousness, varying in strength, influence, and power over time. On its own, this mentality has limited ability to impose its will on others. But when these various versions of the primacy of consciousness are backed up by the power and force of the state, then what exists is not liberty, but tyranny. Governments exist to protect natural rights, not violate them. But when church and state merge, as in Iran, when ideology and state unite, as with enforced woke compliance, when tech and state collude through social media censorship, or when anarchy and state align via open borders and sanctuary cities, the 3 major versions of the primacy of consciousness converge and conspire against us from every possible angle. The result isn't just problematic, it's potentially catastrophic, as is evidenced in every totalitarian state and make-believe utopia. The primacy of consciousness mentality always resorts to force, because without truth on its side, it cannot win any other way. However, the real danger isn't just the bullying of these ideologues and malcontents. It's when that bullying is backed by the tyrannical power of the state. That institutionalized level of resistance is the true threat to our well-being, safety, and religious freedom today. We'll expand on this later, but for now, understand that state-enforced compliance is not just a local or regional issue, nor merely an argument between you and your neighbors or coworkers. It has reached national and even global proportions, where the dark and terrible truth, we don't have to control reality, we just have to control you, goes unspoken, yet has become a living reality for each of us, even here in America. Today, the globalists' war on reality is ground zero, where their tyrannical agenda is driven by the delusional belief that controlling consciousness means controlling reality itself. This isn't a conspiracy theory, but merely a continuation of the war in heaven, only on a global scale, and for global dominance. After all, these globalists will continue to insist that consciousness has primacy over reality, claiming for themselves like Lucifer, God-like authority over existence and, more importantly, over others. Their whim-driven ideology of enforced compliance boils down to one chilling decree. Reality is whatever we say it is, and you will comply. That is the global agenda we are confronted with today. To drive this point home, in our Unit 20 overview quiz presentation, I'll include two familiar and recent examples of this globalist agenda being implemented right under our noses, with the support of many well-meaning Americans who should know better. This ends this Unit 20 presentation. Thank you for watching. Join us for Unit 21, where we'll continue our exploration of the most important gospel primacy issue of all, the primacy of existence versus the primacy of consciousness. Don't forget to watch the Unit 20 overview quiz, where we'll showcase two recent and well-known examples of the globalist agenda. Reality is whatever we say it is, and you will comply.